Ladies love, we all want it, we chase it, some of us fight for it, some of us lose ourselves in it, but here's the brutal truth. 99% of love stories fail, and not because love isn't real, but because we don't love right. We don't love wisely, and most of all, we don't love ourselves first. You see, we enter relationships hoping to be completed, hoping someone will rescue us from our loneliness, our insecurities, our fears. But you can't expect someone else to fix what's broken inside you. That's your job. Most people fall in love with a fantasy, the idea of what love should feel like, the movie moments, the highs, the validation. But the moment reality kicks in, the effort fades. We crave comfort, not growth, attention, not connection. And here's the kicker. People don't fail at love because they stopped loving each other. They fail because they stopped respecting each other. They stopped communicating. They stopped being present. We talk about red flags but ignore our own. We give too much, too fast, hoping it'll be enough to keep them. We abandon our standards just to feel chosen. But listen to me closely. Being chosen by someone who doesn't truly see your worth is not love. It's a lesson. You want to know why 99% of love fails? Because people love out of need, not from a place of wholeness. Because people don't want to build with someone. They want perfection handed to them. Because people fall for appearances and chemistry and forget the foundation: trust, honesty, commitment. Love isn't about butterflies. That's adrenaline. Love is about consistency. It's about showing up when it's hard, when it's boring, when it's painful. Real love requires work. Real love demands healing, and most people simply aren't ready to do the inner work that love demands. You cannot keep giving your heart to someone who hasn't even healed theirs. You cannot keep pouring into a relationship that empties you in return. You cannot keep confusing attachment with affection. Or control with care. So if you've been heartbroken, if love failed, you don't blame love. Love never fails. People fail at loving because love doesn't walk away. Love doesn't manipulate. Love doesn't cheat. Lie or disappear when it gets hard. That was not love. That was a lesson. And maybe you had to lose them to find you. So here's the truth. If 99% of love fails, be the 1% who doesn't settle, who doesn't chase, who doesn't lose herself trying to be enough for someone who is never ready. Be the 1% that heals, that grows, that loves with clarity, not desperation. Don't beg to stay in someone's life if they can't see your value walk. Because when love is real, it won't make you feel anxious. It will make you feel safe. You are not hard to love. You just loved people who didn't know how to love you back. So rise, rebuild, redefine what love means to you. Because when you become whole, you won't just find love, you'll attract the kind that doesn't fail. We often grow up with the idea that love is the missing piece to our lives, the thing that will make everything make sense, the cure to loneliness, the answer to pain. So, when we meet someone who gives us attention, who shows up in ways we've longed for, we begin to convince ourselves that this is it. This is love. This is what we've been waiting for. But here's the truth most people don't talk about. A lot of us are not falling in love. We're falling into need. We're falling into our emotional wounds and asking another human being to patch them up. We think we're choosing love, but what we're really doing is trying to escape our own emptiness through another person. When you don't feel whole, it's easy to mistake connection for compatibility. It's easy to become addicted to attention and confuse it with affection. You start loving not from a space of abundance, but from a void. You hand over your heart hoping that someone else will make you feel worthy. You start to believe that being loved by them will finally quiet all those voices in your head telling you that you're not good enough. But the thing is, no one can love you into loving yourself. That work is yours, and if you don't do it, no relationship will ever feel like enough. When people say, "I can't live without you," it sounds romantic, but it's actually dangerous. It speaks to how dependent we've become on someone else for our sense of peace, our sense of self. And dependence is not love, it's survival. You cannot enter love with the expectation that someone else will rescue you. Because love is not a life raft. Love is two whole people choosing to walk together, not one person carrying the emotional weight of another. When one or both people are incomplete, the relationship turns into a cycle of neediness, insecurity, and control. And that's when love begins to suffocate. The healthiest relationships are built on freedom, not fear. But when you're not whole, you fear abandonment, you fear rejection, you fear that the slightest distance means they're leaving. You read silence as punishment, you overthink, you overgive, you overcompensate, and in trying so hard to hold on to them, you start losing pieces of yourself. You become who you think they want you to be, not who you truly are. You shrink, you silence your needs, and eventually love becomes a performance. Something you do to keep someone instead of something you feel because you're safe enough to be fully yourself. And the tragedy is, it often ends the way it was destined to, with you feeling like you weren't enough, when in reality the love failed because it was built on broken foundations. You needed them more than you loved them, and maybe they did too. It was never about growing together, it was about using each other to feel less alone. If you want real love, the kind that doesn't collapse under pressure, the kind that feels safe and secure, you have to become whole first. You have to heal the parts of you that feel unworthy, the wounds that tell you you need to earn love. You have to fall in love with your own company before you expect someone else to enjoy it. You have to stop asking people to fix what you keep avoiding. Love isn't a therapy session. It's not supposed to heal what you refuse to face. Until you become whole, love will always feel like a war between your hope and your hurt. It's not your partner's job to save you, it's yours. And when you do that inner work, when you fill your own cup, love no longer becomes a lifeline, it becomes a choice. A beautiful, balanced, healthy choice. When people fall in love, the first thing they cling to is the feeling, the rush, the excitement, the butterflies in the stomach. And sure, those first few weeks, maybe months, are magical. It's new, it's thrilling, everything they do is cute. Every text makes your heart race. You start imagining a future based on chemistry alone. But here's the truth that most people ignore until it's too late. Butterflies fade. The excitement calms down, the novelty wears off, and then what's left? That's where most relationships start to fall apart, because the connection was never built on anything deeper than a spark. We've been conditioned to equate intensity with intimacy. The more someone makes us feel high, the more convinced we are that it must be love. But love is not a drug. It's not meant to keep you addicted. Love is meant to ground you. It's meant to bring peace, not confusion. But we don't look for peace, we look for fireworks. We ignore the stillness that comes with real emotional safety and chase the chaos that comes with emotional unpredictability. Consistency, that's boring to most people. They'd rather have dramatic highs and painful lows because at least that feels alive. But consistency is where the truth lives. Anyone can say sweet things. Anyone can give you attention for a few weeks. But who shows up when you're struggling? Who listens without judgment? Who stays loyal when it's not convenient? That's love. People fail at love because they stop showing up. They stop doing the small things. They get comfortable. They think the work ends once the person says, "I love you." But that's actually when the real work begins, because maintaining love requires commitment, effort, and showing up, especially when you don't feel like it. You don't get to choose someone once. You have to choose them every single day. And consistency isn't about grand gestures. It's about the daily moments of kindness, respect, honesty, and presence. It's about checking in, keeping promises, being emotionally available, and making your partner feel seen. Not just in the good times, but especially in the uncomfortable ones. It's about showing love even when you're tired, annoyed, stressed, or busy. That's what real commitment looks like. We get so caught up in how someone makes us feel that we ignore how they treat us. But it's the treatment that matters most. Feelings change, attraction changes. But how someone shows up for you, that's what defines whether it's love or just temporary desire. Relationships are not destroyed by a lack of love. They're destroyed by a lack of effort. Love without action is just a word. You can tell someone you love them 100 times a day, but if your actions say otherwise, it's empty. You can say they're your priority, but if they always come last, your words lose meaning. Love is not about always agreeing. It's not about perfection. It's not about the absence of conflict. It's about how you handle those conflicts, how you continue choosing each other in the tough moments, how you apologize when you're wrong, how you grow together, not apart. If you want something real, stop chasing feelings and start valuing consistency. Find someone who shows up every day, not just when it's convenient, and more importantly, be that someone. Because love that is nurtured with daily effort, love that is steady and dependable, may not look like a movie, but it's the kind that lasts. Love, in its purest form, never fails. It doesn't lie. It doesn't cheat. It doesn't leave when things get hard, but people do. That's where the disconnect lies. It's not love that disappoints us, it's the people who misuse it, misunderstand it, and misrepresent it. We often say love failed. But what really happened was two people failed at loving each other the way love is meant to be lived, honestly, selflessly, consistently. The problem isn't with love. The problem is with how people show up or don't once they say, I love you. People say those 3 words far too easily without understanding the weight they carry. I love you should never be a promise of just feelings. It should be a promise of action, of responsibility, of growth. But most people fall in love with the idea of someone, with the illusion of who they want that person to be. And when reality starts to show up with flaws, insecurities, imperfections, they pull back. They ghost, they detach, they walk away, not because love died, but because it was never strong enough to begin with. People confuse love with possession, with control, with comfort, but love is not supposed to feel like walking on eggshells. It's not supposed to make you feel small. It's not supposed to leave you questioning your worth every night. That's not love, that's emotional immaturity dressed up in desire. Love listens, love stays. Love builds even when things aren't pretty, but so many people aren't equipped to love because they haven't taken the time to understand themselves. They enter relationships dragging unresolved trauma, buried insecurities, and unmet needs, expecting another person to fix what's broken. And when the other person can't heal those wounds because they're not supposed to, they blame them. They say love failed, when in reality they brought unhealed baggage into a space meant for clarity and connection. Love fails when people stop trying, when ego becomes more important than communication, when silence replaces vulnerability, when being right is more important than being close. People stop showing up in the way they did in the beginning. They stop appreciating, they stop listening. They assume love will sustain itself, but love doesn't live on autopilot. It requires conscious effort every single day. There's also a hard truth people avoid. Love demands growth, and not everyone wants to grow. Some people want the feeling of love without the responsibility. They want someone to make them feel good, but they're not ready to show up in the moments that require patience, sacrifice, and self-awareness. So when the spark fades, they leave, not because love failed, but because they weren't willing to evolve with it. And we need to stop romanticizing pain and calling it love. Stop saying love is hard. No. Love is not hard. People make it hard. Love isn't supposed to break you. It's supposed to help you become more of who you are, not less. If you're constantly shrinking, begging, proving, compromising yourself, worth, that's not love. That's emotional survival. So when love fails, don't blame love itself. Look at how it was practiced. Look at what was tolerated. Look at what was missing. Love never fails. But people fail to understand that love isn't about perfection, it's about presence. It's about choosing someone over and over again, especially when things get real. Because the truth is, love is always enough if the people in it are willing to be. We talk so much about red flags in others that we rarely stop to acknowledge our own. When love fails, most of us immediately look outward. We blame the other person, their issues, their inability to commit, their emotional unavailability. But rarely do we turn the mirror on ourselves and ask, what did I ignore? What did I tolerate? What parts of me were so desperate to be loved that I abandoned myself just to feel chosen? This is where love begins to crack, not in betrayal, not in heartbreak, but in those quiet moments where we willingly silence our needs, ignore our intuition, and stay longer than we should. We are so quick to give our all to people who have not even earned our trust. We offer depth to those who only want surface. We give loyalty to someone who hasn't even committed. And when it falls apart, we sit there asking, why wasn't I enough? But the truth is, it's never about being enough for someone else. It's about being enough for yourself so that you don't have to beg for the bare minimum. You don't have to keep proving your worth to people who were never equipped to value it. Many relationships fail because we choose people from a place of loneliness instead of wholeness. We ignore the patterns, the lack of effort, the hot and cold energy, just because we want to believe in potential. But potential is not love, words are not love, consistency is love, safety is love, someone showing up every time is love. And most of us don't even know what that looks like because we've accepted chaos for so long. We've started calling it passion. The most dangerous thing we do in relationships is abandon ourselves. We downplay our boundaries. We become quiet when something hurts us. We make excuses for behavior that clearly disrespects us, all in the name of keeping the relationship alive. But what is the point of keeping something alive if it's slowly killing you inside? You can't save something that's only surviving because you've stopped asking for what you deserve. We've been taught to fight for love, to never give up. But not all love is worth fighting for, especially when you're the only one fighting. Especially when the love you're fighting for is costing you your peace, your joy, your identity. Real love should never require you to lose yourself in order to keep someone else. There's this idea that if you just love someone hard enough, they'll change. They'll see your worth. They'll stop hurting you. But that's not how love works. Love does not fix people. Love doesn't force growth that has to come from them. And until we understand that, we'll keep falling for the same emotional patterns, expecting different outcomes. We'll keep watering dead plants, wondering why nothing blooms. You deserve a love that doesn't confuse you, that doesn't make you question if you're good enough. You deserve a love where you don't have to chase, beg, or shrink. But to receive that kind of love, you must first be willing to give it to yourself. Because when you start valuing your heart, you stop handing it to people who only want to borrow it. You stop mistaking emotional intensity for genuine care. Most love doesn't fail because two people didn't care. It fails because one person kept choosing the other while slowly unchoosing themselves. If you want something that lasts, don't just focus on who you love. Focus on how you love. And never again make the mistake of believing that love should ever cost you. We don't talk enough about how often people give up parts of themselves just to be loved. They start out strong, confident, radiant, knowing exactly who they are. But the moment someone comes along and offers attention, affection, or even the illusion of love, they begin to bend, they compromise their standards, they silence their voice, they ignore their intuition. Not because they don't know better, but because they fear losing that love more than they fear losing themselves. And that's exactly how love begins to break. Not because it was never there, but because we abandon ourselves just to keep someone else. At the root of so many failed relationships is the hunger for validation, the deep, unhealed need to be wanted, to be seen, to feel like you finally matter to someone. That kind of hunger will have you accepting the bare minimum. It will have you staying in situations where you feel anxious more than you feel loved. It will convince you that being chosen occasionally is better than not being chosen at all, and so you stay, you overgive. You chase, you apologize for things that weren't your fault. You try to be easy, chill, low maintenance, just so they won't leave, but in doing that, you start leaving yourself. The tragedy is that when love ends, we often blame ourselves. We replay every conversation, we overanalyze every moment, we ask, what did I do wrong? But the real question is, why did I keep giving to someone who never truly gave back? The answer, because you were looking for worth in someone else's approval. Because somewhere along the way, you internalized the belief that love is something you have to earn, that being enough means being whatever someone else needs, even if that means losing your identity in the process. That is not love, that is self-abandonment dressed as devotion. And no matter how romantic the story sounds, no matter how many songs and movies try to glorify it, shrinking yourself to be loved is not noble. It's dangerous. It leaves you emotionally exhausted, insecure, and resentful. You start waking up next to someone who doesn't really know you because you've spent so long pretending to be someone they'd want. When you chase validation, you set the foundation for imbalance. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you tolerate, and what you're willing to stay silent about. And if you keep allowing disrespect just to avoid conflict, if you keep accepting crumbs just to feel like you're not alone, you'll never experience the kind of love that nourishes instead of depletes. Real love doesn't ask you to disappear. It doesn't require you to constantly prove your worth. It doesn't punish you for having needs. It holds space for your growth. It celebrates your individuality. And most importantly, it brings peace, not confusion. But to receive that kind of love, you have to stop chasing it. You have to return to yourself. You have to look at the parts of you that believe you have to earn love and start healing them. Because the truth is, the love you attract will always mirror the love you give yourself. If you keep abandoning yourself, you will continue attracting people who do the same. But if you learn to stand firm in your worth, if you set boundaries, if you walk away from anything that asks you to dim your light, that's when everything changes. You're not here to be half loved. You're not here to be almost. You're not here to convince anyone of your value. You're here to be whole, with or without someone else. And the moment you realize that is the moment you stop chasing and start choosing from a place of strength, not scarcity. One of the biggest reasons love fails is that people confuse attachment with love. They believe the intensity of missing someone, the anxiety of being without them, the pain of not being around them, that must be love. But that's not love. That's emotional dependency. That's fear of being alone. That's the mind clinging to a familiar person or pattern and calling it passion. Real love, the kind that nourishes you, never makes you feel like you're suffocating when you're not around someone. It doesn't cause panic. It creates peace. It doesn't cage you. It frees you. But the sad truth is, most of us are not falling in love with people. We are falling in love with how they make us feel about ourselves. We fall in love with the reflection we see through their eyes, and the moment they stop giving us attention, the moment they pull away, we don't know who we are anymore. We confuse that emptiness with heartbreak, But in reality, it's the withdrawal from the validation they used to give us. That's not love. It's addiction to approval, and love based on validation will always collapse because it depends on something external that can't stay consistent forever. True love isn't about filling your emptiness. It's about sharing your fullness. It's not "I need you to make me whole." It's "I'm whole and I choose to share myself with you." But that requires self-awareness. It requires healing. It requires a level of emotional maturity that says, "I know who I am without you, and because of that, I can love you without losing me." When both people bring that kind of energy into a relationship, it becomes a space of growth, of stability, of honesty. When only one person brings it, it turns into imbalance, anxiety, and pain. Attachment feels like chaos. You're constantly overthinking, constantly chasing reassurance, constantly wondering if you're being replaced. But love is calm, love is steady, love feels safe. The problem is, many people have never experienced love that wasn't tied to performance. Maybe you grew up believing you had to earn affection. Maybe you learned early on that love comes with conditions. So when you meet someone who loves you without you having to struggle for it, it feels foreign. You start to think, is this too easy, too boring? Because your nervous system is used to equating drama with love. That's why so many people sabotage healthy relationships. They say they want peace, but they chase passion that burns them. They say they want commitment, but they choose emotionally unavailable partners. And when those relationships inevitably fail, they say, love isn't real. When the truth is, they've never allowed themselves to experience real love. Just unhealthy attachments that look like love from a distance. Until we learn to sit with ourselves, to enjoy our own company, to validate our own worth, we will always chase the next person who gives us temporary relief from our inner loneliness. But no partner can heal what you keep avoiding. No one else can save you from the parts of yourself you refuse to face. The deepest love starts within. When you know your worth, you stop settling. When you feel secure in yourself, you stop clinging. When you feel full on your own, you don't attract people out of fear. You attract them out of genuine connection. That's when love becomes a beautiful addition to your life, not a survival strategy. And maybe that's the lesson. Real love begins the moment you stop needing it to complete you. Because you were never meant to be completed by someone else. You were always meant to be whole, and to choose someone from that wholeness, not from your wounds.